How Grant Cardone changed my life. He taught me how to raise capital. Back in 2020, I called his office and I got on the phone with one of his salesmen and they said, yeah, you can come down for free. But let me tell you, it was not free. It cost me $15,000. But it was one of the best $15,000 I ever spent. So back in 2020, I was on Instagram and Grant Cardone's profile came up. And I'm like, who's this guy? What does he do? I do some research. He is in real estate. I'm like, how does he have so much real estate? So I go through his sales funnel. I call his company and act like I'm a customer just to see what they do and learn from it, etc. They say, yeah, you can come down to the office and visit. I'm like, oh, okay, super cool. So I book some tickets, some flight tickets with my videographer, and we come down and we walk into this amazing building in Aventura. It's beautiful. And one of his representatives kind of takes us through their morning routine, introduces us to some of the team. We practice objection handling with them. At the time, I didn't even know that he had sales training and was so big in that space. I found out that he makes about $5 million a month back then, which is even more now probably, off of his sales training program. So that was just super cool. Everybody has to wear a suit there. It was a very clean-cut business, very well run, insane. I understand how this guy's a multi-billionaire, but at the time I was 23 years old. So for me, this was crazy. This was big. So after they kind of take us through their morning, practice with us, introduce us to everybody, we're all pumped up, and their head sales guy, his name is Jack. He comes, he sits down with me, and he's like, all right, you came here for a reason. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, what is this? He goes, we have many products which will best fit your needs. So he ends up selling me on a couple $100 a month sales training course for myself and my real estate team. And then he ends up selling me on a boot camp where Grant is actually gonna be there. So I didn't get to meet Grant the first time, but Grant's gonna be there this time. The boot camp is $5,000 a day, and it's a 2-day boot camp. So I ended up going to the first day, paid $5,000 for it. And the second day I showed up. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna go. I might try to stay for free. I don't know what's gonna happen. But I get there and I wanted to stay. I ended up really wanting to stay, and I paid an additional $5,000. So $10,000 for the boot camp and a couple hundred a month. I think it was for like 6 months after I left. And it was absolutely fabulous. I learned a lot about Grant, his fund, and he was raising capital at hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars at a time. I knew I couldn't do that, but I knew I wanted to get into raising capital. So I came back to Wisconsin. I was living in Wisconsin at the time. I was like, how can I raise capital? How can I make this work? Did some more research and I found promissory notes. I said, okay. So then I'm like, this is it. This is how I can raise capital. I raised $75,000 for my first deal on a property that I purchased. I didn't need to put much money into it. I put a little bit of money into it. But I raised $75,000 at a 10% return over a 1-year span. So what that means for you guys that don't know is an investor gives me $75,000. I pay them back 10% return, which is $7,500 over a 1-year period. So the investor gives me 75, I pay him $82,500 within 1 year. The reason an investor would want to do this deal is because he was an older guy and he no longer wanted to work, put in the sweat equity. Whereas I was 23, I was young, I was hustling. So we made the perfect partnership. I certainly overpaid for my first property at the time when I bought it, but I was just so excited to raise capital and learn my lessons because I knew once I learned my lesson that it would be exponential from there. I still make good money on the property today. It cash flows very well. And I've made a couple $100,000 of appreciation on it as well. So I'm not mad I did it. At the time I overpaid, but real estate long term, you're never gonna lose money. So it's good. But that's kind of how I got sucked into Grant's world, how he changed my life. I'm super thankful for him. A lot of people kind of look down on him for some of his marketing. They think he's this, they think he's that, but in reality, if you look at his businesses, he's a tremendous marketer. He's a tremendous business guy. He's a multi-billionaire now. He knows the real estate game. So if you're in real estate, I would highly suggest going to visit him and meet with him and all of the above, because it's really cool what he has going on. And he certainly did me wonders.